Hello, everybody. Welcome to Let's Talk Football. My name is John Halpin, alongside Chris Palma. How you doing, my brother?
Well, man, this postseason is wrapping up, and some head scratches from this past weekend, man.
Yeah,
For real.
there's been a lot of twists and turns in this postseason so far. But I guess the theme of this weekend is turnovers, 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 because they are absolutely killer in the playoffs. So let's get right into our divisional round recap, starting with Saturday's game, the Texans and the Chiefs. The Chiefs defeating the Texans 23-14. Um, there was a lot of controversy with officiating, but the Chiefs set to host the AFC Championship game next week.
There just can't be a Kansas City Chiefs game without some controversy. It's just good season for the Texans. It's unfortunate that everyone knows when you play them, you also have to play everybody in attendance. And I'm not talking about the fans. Um, Move on to the next one. Chiefs will see you at the championship. I'm not impressed by this at all.
But CP, I know you were impressed with the Washington Commanders and Jaden Daniels on Saturday night when the Commanders upset the Lions 45-31. This was I don't think anyone saw this coming.
No, but I will agree with yes. I was 100% impressed. Shout out Jaden Daniels. You have set your feet in the postseason, and you are off to the races right now. But I also want to give a shout out to Dan Quinn for the absolute coaching masterclass that you put on against Dan Campbell. You went up to Dan Campbell, who was the most fearless fourth down attempt quarterback coach in the league, and said, I'm going to show you I'm better at your game in every way. And you did.
Mm-hmm.
I can't help but respect that in the most to the maximum with Dan Quinn. Congratulations, Washington, to get to the championship.
Yeah, they did so many great things that game where it was unfortunate for the Lions again for their season to end this way is extremely disappointing because they had their best season of their entire franchise but they didn't play their best game. And Washington, they played a complete game, and like you said, Dan Quinn, he played fearless football against Dan Campbell and didn't blink.
Right.
And for that, Washington advances to the NFC Championship game. This is an extremely impressive year for Washington, and a lot of heads are turning now.
Right. All eyes are on Washington right now, for sure.
And they have a familiar foe in the NFC Championship for next week's game. Eagles played the Rams this divisional round on Sunday. Eagles won 28-22. This was another fun snow game. But man, this was a very dramatic one all the way into the end.
This one was fun to watch.
Mm-hmm.
Like, for real, this is one of the most fun games I think I've watched in a postseason in a very long time. Hats off to Philly. They really showed out. Rams fell a little short, but better team won. Philly has the best offensive line in the league, and it's not close.
Yeah, the Eagles and Commanders are set to play a round 3 against each other for
in
the
the
NFC
championship.
in the NFC Championship game. We're in for a good one. But let's move on to the last game on Sunday's divisional round, and that is the Ravens and Bills. And the Bills beating the Ravens 27-25. This was a dramatic one. And hats off to the Bills. They move on to the AFC Championship game to play the Chiefs.
Yeah, great game to watch. Another really fun one. Mark Andrews, come on, man. This is too much of a pattern that in 2-point conversions late in the game, nerves get to you. I'm gonna say it's that. I'm not gonna say you don't have hands because you're a lethal tight end. But that situation specifically, it seems to get the best of you. You have to shake that. That is not the first time you have dropped a 2-point attempt late in the game to win.
I remember from 2001 when they played against the Steelers, we went for it on that. Basically the same play, and he dropped it too. And it was like,
Right.
it's funny because that played in my mind after like that happened, and it's funny. Just the Instagram algorithm was like, "Oh, this is what you were thinking. I'm going to show you that replay again."
I'm going to show you that replay. There's a couple of others in between then too. It's like you got to shake that nerve, man. But on to the next one. Congratulations, Buffalo.
I will say, as like watching this game, this was such a dramatic game, and I got to give my hats off to the Bills because they did exactly they did what the Ravens just self-imploded. They beat themselves, and the Bills didn't beat themselves. They had no turnovers. They did exactly what they needed to. They scored 27 points, and Josh Allen only had 147 total yards. That's combined rushing and passing that game. He did exactly what was necessary to win. Whereas the Ravens, we just, for me, it was a big difference of
Control.
pain. Where last year was in the playoffs, it was like 3 hours of suffocating pain under the Chiefs. And it was like, it just felt torturous the whole time. This was 5 shots straight to the heart.
Right.
And I could tell you the 5 plays exactly that changed this whole game. It was for that first interception, for that like careless interception, that fumble by Lamar, those 2 early turnovers set the stage for the Bills to take the lead and hold on to it. And before the half, the pass interference call on Tre'Davious White that should not have been called, which allowed the Bills to go up 21 at the half. The Mark Andrews fumble and the Mark Andrews drop. And man, that was it those 5 shots all right there. I was like, damn, that's killer football. Like we said before, turnovers, man. That's what decides games.
And it's really when they happen, too. Like, if they happen at the most crucial points, that's really, you could take all the wind out of your sails without even wanting them to.
It's 3 out of the 4 teams that lost this weekend lost the turnover battle. And you could clearly see why. The other team that did not, they allowed 8 sacks. So
right. So not turnovers, but they had no movement.
Exactly. So, but man, this sets up for a very dramatic stage for championship weekend. So, congratulations to all the teams that moved on. And CP, you ready to just dive right into it, mate?
Yeah, man. Championship weekend. It's gonna be good.
Let's do it. So, let's start with. There's only 2 games left. Let's start with the first game on Sunday, and that is the NFC Championship game. The Commanders versus the Eagles, round 3. CP, I know you're itching to talk this one, so I'll pass the torch to you, my friend.
There's a lot here.
Oh,
you know what I'm saying? So when it comes to football as of late, you got, like, again, you start thinking about it more as a business. What puts asses in seats, right?
Mm-hmm.
What is the draw in this league right now? Well, of course, you have Kansas City going for the 3-peat. But there's a lot of things happening on the other side of the conference. And it starts with these 2 teams right here. Start with Philly. One of the most blockbuster interdivision trades of all time happened.
Oh, it wasn't a trade. It was free agency.
Oh, free agent. Sorry, it was a free agency. Correct. So one of the top free agents in the league goes to an already hot offense that had a couple of questions going into the league after Jason Kelce retired, passes the torch to the center who clearly went off to the races even after that. Mm-hmm. And he proceeds to have a career year. Pretty much in spite of the Giants. I'm doing this to spite you guys.
Mm-hmm.
And now he's a step away from making their worst nightmare come true. Quite literally, he's 1 game away from making the Giants' worst nightmare come true.
Mm-hmm.
And that is to see him in the Super Bowl, not in a Giants uniform.
this whole football season, like just real quick, has just been a big fuck you to the Giants.
To
With
the New
every
York
for,
franchises
for
as a whole.
but very specifically the NFC, very much to the
Pretty much,
Giants.
yeah.
Like this conference game is
Very much, it has just been a giant middle finger to the fucking Giants this year. Especially because now they have two interdivision rivals playing a round 3 in the championship game.
Mhm.
So there's that little draw with the Eagles. And now you look at Washington. Now remember, you and I kind of saw a pulse happening at the end of Ron Rivera's stint as coach.
Mm-hmm.
That there was something there, but Ron Rivera wasn't really the coach. He had to go worry about his health. Sam Howell wasn't it, but he could play. They just needed to get a quarterback. They had some pieces.
Like they had a great receiving core.
Great receiving core.
I remember at one point, I think it was like 2-3 years ago, it was like McLaurin, Jahan Dotson, and Curtis Samuel, and all great receivers. So go on.
I think the only one to remain now is just Terry McLaurin. I don't think the other two are still around.
No.
So they got rid of them for draft stock. They got rid of Chase Young for draft stock, and because he was a problem with taking plays off, they started trimming fat. They got Dan Quinn, and all the questions started sparking. Which direction is Washington going to go? And then they draft Jaden Daniels. And then now now everyone's starting to ask the big question. How is Jaden Daniels going to fit into Dan Quinn's playbook? He's not this, he's not that, he's not a pocket passer, it doesn't fit the scheme, it doesn't do this, Washington's not going to do great. Fast forward 18 weeks. We are now in the NFC Championship, and Jaden Daniels is a game away from making history as being the first ever rookie to find himself in a Super Bowl. Probably a runaway rookie of the year, I would think.
If he does complete it, he's immortal.
If he completes it, it will be the best rookie season of all time.
Without a doubt.
So you want to talk about like the ripple effect that's happening in the NFC right now. There is greatness happening, and it's coming from Washington. I hope there isn't too far of a drop-off next year, because you set this expectation for yourself rookie year. There's no turning back. There's no I had an off season. It's no, where is that? Where is that? You need to show me that again. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
This game excites me in so many ways.
Bro, it's just thinking about this game. I'm thinking that this NFC East rivalry is about to be elevated in the next couple years, but it's going to start with this game.
Oh, yeah.
And because in the NFC East, there's so much like bitter rivalries between two teams, Giants and Eagles, right? Eagles and Cowboys.
Giants and Cowboys.
Giants and Cowboys. Washington, like for the last couple years, has really taken a step back from all those like interconnected rivalries, right? It hasn't felt as pulling or captivating of like Cowboys and Washington, Philly and Washington,
right?
Giants and Washington. Giants and Washington has been interesting because they've kind of been at the same level of competition for the last couple years too. So where they kind of the last couple years they kind of intersected where the Giants were good a couple years ago and then went on the decline. Washington was bad and now they're on the incline, and they kind of met
in the way.
Yeah, like for the last couple years. But this new identity for Washington fits them so well.
I love it.
And they are the best word I could think of for Washington is resilient. They are an extremely resilient team where they have not lost a game since November 24th. Shout out to Gunny because that's his birthday. But they have not lost a game since then. And for them to, again, as you have said last week in last week's episode, they've been playing playoff football for the better part of 2 months now.
Right.
So they are a 60-minute team that can beat you throwing the ball, running the ball, and they have good enough defense to win, right? They're not the best defense, but they're led by their vets, obviously starting with Bobby Wagner, and who's a Dan Quinn guy.
Right.
So, and Dan Quinn is a defensive-minded coach. He's going to prioritize, especially now. He's going to be like prioritize the importance of making opportunities, because one thing that the Commanders have done very successfully that has really turned their whole season around from like Sam Howell last year, right, to Jaden Daniels is the turnover battle, man. They have cleaned up so much of the turnover battle. Like Jaden Daniels only had 9 interceptions this year, and he had a collective 31 touchdowns between passing and rushing. So like he's, 3-1 on your touchdown to interception ratio. That's some pretty good numbers for a rookie. And from a lot of reports and a lot of articles that you read about Jaden Daniels, is everyone says that his work ethic is top notch. Like he is in the film room studying film. He is the first one in the building to be working out. Like he is like motivated. And if I could quote John Harbaugh with Lamar, it's like he's a player that demands excellence. And I think that for Washington, Jaden Daniels is another player that demands excellence.
Yes, he demands excellence while also commanding respect.
I think no, you're right. Commanding works better for
he
the
commands
Commanders.
it because
he's a commander.
Because demanding it and commanding it are different, right?
Exactly.
When you walk in and you make demands, you have to answer those. But if you come in, you make not a single demand, you just go to work and do what you're good at, you start to command people.
Exactly. See,
you know
that's
what
the
I'm
better
saying?
word.
So when it comes to Jaden Daniels' work ethic, it really is pretty unprecedented to see from a rookie. You see people, they get in, they go to work, but he put a stipulation going into the Washington Commanders this year. I think I touched on it briefly, that he was using a virtual reality type of situation at practice to watch film and go through mental reps on what to do against a defensive scheme. Personally, I feel like the NFL should invest wholeheartedly across the board in that, because right now Washington is the only facility to do that. And they keep that up for much longer, Jaden Daniels will be so far ahead, there will be no catching up. So if you want to, I don't want to say level the playing field, because he is a rookie and he does have a lot of growth to do still, but that is an edge. That is a mental edge for him that no one else in this league is getting. Straightforward. And work ethic, new type of training, you don't see him have an ounce of anxiety. There was one stint where I saw him where he had to take a minute and prepare himself for what was happening. And one of his veterans, this is a name that not a lot of people remember, Marcus Mariota, went over to him, picked him up by his shoulder pads and said, do what you were good at, and you go and you got this. And he went down the field and he scored a game-winning drive. That is what everyone needs every so often to go and be great. He has a unit around him that believe in him. He commands that respect. This is his team. This is going to be his team for a long time.
Oh, yeah. And one last thing I want to touch on with Washington is that the new ownership is very reflective of the new identity of the team. And CP, we've talked about it before, where teams that are willing to invest in their players are the ones that are the most successful franchises. And now Washington, like you said, this is a new like feature utilizing technology. They are investing in their players like through their facilities, and that's so great to see because again, we see that on the field. We see
Right.
how great
Those mental reps he's getting is different.
Mm-hmm. And to utilize technology to your advantage, where it's like you're becoming a better player through the use of it, like that's some stuff that's like very new to football, but I think it's very well needed as well.
It's long term for the game, without a
Mm-hmm.
doubt. You know what I'm, especially with just how fast the game is getting.
Mm-hmm.
You know, we watched the speed of the game pick up almost by the year, mostly because of rule changes that enhance the speed of the offensive production.
Mm-hmm.
You know, um, but even still, you have to be able to read a defensive scheme and go through progressions as quick as you can. I said it to nauseum with Pittsburgh this year when it came to issues with quarterbacks reading progressions.
Mm-hmm.
You hold the ball longer than 3.5 seconds, you're fucked. You're just fucked. 4 seconds is way too long to ask your offensive line to hold someone off. You don't see that from any other offensive line except for Philly.
Mm-hmm.
They are the best offensive line in the league, and it's not close. They give Jalen Hurts 4 seconds. You
Man,
won't find another offensive line that does that.
and it's so. Let's flip it to Philly because there's so much with Philly where it's like I want to piggyback right off that where it's again right to the identity of a team. And
Smash mouth football. This is
that
what it is.
and that has been Nick Sirianni's identity with the Eagles since he's been a coach of the Eagles. He's like, we are going to run the ball and we are going to dominate it at the line of scrimmage to the point where it's like we are going to be one of the best rushing teams in the league. And every year that Nick Sirianni has been in the league, their offensive line has been top 1 to 2 every year,
Right.
and their running game has been like top 5, like top 5 every year.
Right.
And this year, if it wasn't for the Ravens, they'd be number 1.
Right. They're like 1B, 1 and 1A.
Exactly. And it's like, oh, by the way, your running back has 2,000 yards.
Right.
He's only the 9th player in NFL history that has ever done that. And he's
I wonder why.
Because he's just so fucking good. And I gotta say, like for the Commanders and Eagles, man, like again, this rivalry is going to just enhance so much. The battle of Jaden Daniels and Jalen Hurts is going to be great. And I will say Washington has been a thorn in the side of the Eagles for a while, even before Jaden Daniels and Dan Quinn is there. Historically, they've just been teams that have just been a team that has knows how to play against them, right? It doesn't necessarily matter the regime. It's like they know them. They just see them very often. They know what they do. And I remember when the Eagles, a couple years back, when they went on that Super Bowl run with Jalen Hurts, they were 8-0 at one point. Week 9, they played Washington, and Washington beat them.
Right.
Under Ron Rivera, and I couldn't tell you who the fuck the quarterback was.
Was it Case Keenum?
No. Taylor Heineke.
Taylor Heineke.
Yes! That's who it was.
It was Taylor Heineke.
Taylor Heineke and Scary Terry fucking just tearing it up on the Eagles. And so they've been a thorn in the side for the Eagles for a while, and now I think that this is going to be probably the last year for the Philly where it's like they're going to go through the NFC East with ease. because now I don't expect the Cowboys to be sitting down next year. They'll get some wins, right? Over the Eagles. They'll take their pound of flesh from the Eagles, right? But the Commanders are there, right, at this point in time. Like they are like right at the same level as the Eagles.
Well, there's a see you in January vibe now.
Exactly. We'll see you in January. And man, I gotta say though, this Eagles team looks better than the year they went to the Super Bowl.
They do.
It's
by
so
a far shot.
And they lost key players. Jason Kelsey's not there. Fletcher Cox is not there. They lost anchors to their team, and yet they're better. They're better on the offensive line because they're like this is the highest running production that they have had under Nick Sirianni, and their defense was the second tied for the first best scoring defense in the league.
Yeah, and sometimes that's how it goes. So, when you have names like Jason Kelsey and Fletcher Cox leave, sometimes that pulls a vacuum.
Mm-hmm.
You see it in Pittsburgh when all of our greats left. It was kind of like a fall back down to earth.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean? There really wasn't a torch passing. But with Philly, both of them passed the torch.
Mm-hmm.
Fletcher Cox gave it to Jalen Carter, who has become one of the nastiest bull rush D tackles in this game. And that is the truth. He started out, he was a little lazy. He lost like 30 pounds, and he's fucking out of his mind.
Mm-hmm.
And Jason Kelsey passed the torch to the center now. His name defeats me.
Cam Jurgens.
Cam Jurgens. And he is the forefront of the number one offensive line in the game.
Mm-hmm.
So the transition of the all-time greats to current greats,
Mm-hmm.
because I will put Jalen Carter and Cam Jurgens in those conversations, that they are current greats
Mm-hmm.
at their respective positions.
Mm-hmm.
That made the passing of Jason Kelsey and Fletcher Cox so much more easier to withstand.
Mm-hmm. Again, like we spoke in like our free agency period, right? Or our off-season period. It's like, how do you replace the irreplaceable, right?
Right.
And it's just, for the Eagles, it seems that we don't try to replace them at all. The other
Just
players,
find more irreplaceable people.
the ones that remain, step up, and
Mhm.
they stepped up, and they have into heights where it's like the Eagles have just been like, they made it look easy this year.
They made it look easy.
They made it look so easy this year against the competition, and it's like, man, I was really wanted. I know a couple weeks back I said, like, there's a set of teams that are like destined to collide with each other, and I was thinking that it was going to be the Eagles and the Lions, and I gotta say, as much as like I would have loved that matchup in the playoffs, this one seems a lot more dramatic and a lot more fitting, because it's kind of like, for the Eagles, you're playing against the younger mirror, like the younger version of yourself in the mirror, and it's like, man, they're right here, and we're right here, and they did it a lot faster than we did, but man, there can only be one. There can only be one at this point, and it's this game is going to be extremely dramatic, and I mean, the Commanders deserve to be there as much as the Eagles, man. And as much as we also want to, as much as we also want to, like Jaden Daniels' stats have been great this year. Again, 31 collective touchdowns, 9 interceptions. I was looking at Jalen Hurts' stats. I was like, oh, he's got 34 touchdowns to 5 interceptions. I was like, oh, and 16 rushing touchdowns. Jeez, well, I mean, we know where that comes from, right? That's the tush push still. That's still their, bread and butter that they do. Obviously, now teams kind of like know how to handle it now.
You half expect it now, but
yeah. So it's like, just don't get them into that position, and we can beat them, right? So Jalen Hurts, to me, again, had a great regular season, but this year in the playoffs, he's kind of taken a step back. He's not putting up those numbers. Also, I want to give a shout out to Jalen Perks, because that was really
Jalen Perks was interesting.
Jalen Perks was a funny dude, and I enjoyed seeing Jalen Perks, but he had a really impressive year as well, and I think that he's taken a step back in this offense because he's trying to do kind of like what Josh Allen did last week, right? Just do what is necessary.
Do what you need, not what you want.
Take care of the ball and just do what is necessary. Make a play when you need to make a play, right? But it's like, he's not chasing the numbers. He doesn't care about the numbers. He just cares about the wins. And that's all he wants to do, is like wins over everything else. And I think that's what Nick Sirianni has taught to his team, especially with withholding Saquon from getting that the
Eric Dickerson
record. It's like, the stats are nice, but
they're
wins
hollow
are better.
without a championship.
The wins are better. And it's like, for Eagles fans and for the city of Philly, like, this championship would be like, it kind of redeemed them from 2 years ago, right? Where they were so close to getting it and they just couldn't beat the Chiefs there. And Mahomes, again, in that game, only had 184 passing yards, 3 touchdowns, did what was necessary. And now Jalen Hurts is like, you know what? I want to win, and I'm just going to do what is necessary to win. And lo and behold, they find themselves here.
It also helps having a running back that's a move away from breaking for a touchdown every time he touches the fucking ball confidently.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I'm saying? Like, that helps a lot.
Mm-hmm.
But you think back to the beginning of this year, I don't think anyone saw Washington as their front runners. Even most Commander fans, I don't think they were like, NFC Championship bound this year, we're doing it. It's like, this is a fucking Cinderella story, man. This is impressive and magical to watch with Washington.
It's funny, too, because think about it by the end of last year, right? By the end of the regular season last year and in the playoffs last year, you know, we saw in the NFC, we saw the 49ers and the Lions really take over, like, in the NFC, right? And we're like, oh, man, these two teams are going to go at it right now. Obviously, the Lions, blah, blah, blah. But if you were to say each other that a team from the NFC East is going to be representing the Super Bowl next year, you'd be like, who? Who the fuck is going to be? Because at that point in time, Philly lost their 7 of last 8.
Right.
They were on
like, they lost their whole They were on like a 14-game loss streak into this year.
The Commanders were like extremely bad last year. They only won like 4 or 5 games.
Right.
Like, that's why they were a high draft pick this past year, because they were pretty bad.
They're one of the worst teams in the league.
Yeah, and the Giants were pretty bad as well, and the Cowboys were like had another disappointing playoff. So it's like you look at the NFC East, you're like, who the fuck's going to be in the Super Bowl? But what a difference a year makes. And like we talked about before in our offseason recap, it's like the decisions made in the offseason will reflect come January in the playoffs. And it's like those decisions, and Washington, since getting this new ownership and getting under Dan Snyder, they have made a lot of right decisions for their franchise going forward. They have restored a faith in Washington that you and I have not seen in our lifetimes.
33 years since they've been to the NFC Championship, man.
Yeah.
That's a long fucking time.
So it is, like, for our lifetime to see Washington actually, like, competitive is really, like, inspiring. Where it's like, it's a team that I know you and I didn't talk about. We kind of saw where it's like, they have pieces, right? But, like, let's see how it plays out. Getting under Dan Snyder, you have a fresh new ownership that invests in your team, gets you a new head coach. You can press the reset button with your quarterback and
to the races,
and then sign a couple of vets from free agency, and then boom, you have a team that is one game away from playing in a Super Bowl. What a difference it makes! And for the Eagles, I will say, I think of the butterfly effect when I think of the Eagles. What a butterfly effect from a couple years ago the Giants made. Not the Eagles made, the Giants made. That was like, we're at a crossroads where it's like, do we pay Saquon or do we pay Daniel Jones? And that decision to not pay Saquon had a ripple effect that we are feeling this year. Where it's like you eloquently said before, it is a giant middle finger to the New York franchises. And it's so true, because a year ago, would you have thought, like, oh, Saquon's leaving the Giants and he's going to be an Eagle and he's going to be a 2,000-yard rusher.
A career year.
He's going to have a career year with Philly. And it's like, kind of, when we all saw him go to the Eagles, we're like, oh yeah, he wants to stick it to the Giants.
Everyone knew this was like a villain arc season for him. He was like, I'm going to be the villain the Giants made me be.
Yeah.
Right. The Giants made me this villain. Now I'm going to show you why you should have paid me.
Yep.
And literally, he's knocking on the doorstep of a championship. And it's, if you just invested in him, what could have been for New York?
To think, if two things happened, and I think I sent you this as an Instagram reel where it was like Shannon Sharp or so, where it was like, to think that if the Giants paid Saquon and Tommy Cutlets didn't win them 3 games last year, they could have had Saquon and Jaden Daniels.
Oh
on
my
on
god.
their roster, and it's like, oh, the
Just
butterfly effect.
simple
What
decisions.
what could have been for the New York Giants, right? You could have been a culmination of both of these teams, like of what makes these teams great. These two players have just like again commanded excellence out of the players around them, and same thing from as we said with Jaden Daniels. You could say the same thing with Saquon too. He commands excellence in that
Yes.
locker room, man. Like, and everyone, like this is, and you know me, I'm a big Jalen Hurts fan, but this is Saquon's team. This is Saquon's team. Like he is the heart. He is the engine. Like he is like the whole force behind this team. This team rallies for Saquon. They're like they embraced him with open arms. Said, "Please come to us. We're gonna do great things together." And it's like we're a great fit. Like you said, the offensive line was there. What did Saquon need this whole fucking time that the Giants could never provide? A goddamn offensive line.
Right. It was all and the thing that's the one thing. It's like it was the same type of conversation when we saw Christian McCaffrey go to San Francisco.
Yep.
It was, oh, now we get to see what it is when he has an offensive line. We saw the work he put in
Derrick Henry with the Ravens.
when Derrick Henry went to the Ravens. But
Yep.
you got to remember, there was also a stint when the Titans had a good offensive line when they were division champions.
Oh yeah, but not for
Nowhere near the level
yeah.
of Ravens, but they still had a compact offensive line for a short stint of time. Christian McCaffrey and Saquon Barkley, prior to them leaving their original teams, had never seen a stable offensive line,
Mm-hmm.
leading to injuries, leading to poor play, leading to a bad precedent.
Mhm.
Them two are the same running back, just from a moving piece. Well, they've had the same arc of a career
Mhm.
where it's I get put in an impossible situation that doesn't want to invest in me. I get hurt a couple of times in a couple of short years. I get moved to a team and I have a career year. And I'm knocking on the door of a Super Bowl the same year.
It's crazy too because Carolina traded C-Mac. Giants just let him walk.
See, that's the fucking nuttiest part is you look back and you see the videos from inside the room, right? When the GM of the Giants is talking to his kids. And the both of them straight up they say, pay Saquon, let Daniel Jones go, and pick up Jaden Daniels or JJ McCarthy. Both of which you probably could have fucking made out like bandits with.
Oh, absolutely.
But respectfully, I don't think, even if you had, like, let's say those cards worked for the Giants, I still don't think we would see the production out of either of them.
No, I agree with you. Yeah,
they both would have went into impossible situations, and they would have ran out their deals, and they would have left, and they probably would have gotten hurt a couple of times. They both went into the best possible scenario for them to flourish.
Mm-hmm.
I think Jaden Daniels and the Dan Quinn combination is something that is a match that probably shouldn't have worked, that worked perfectly.
Mm-hmm.
And Saquon going to Nick Sirianni, that was a match made in heaven.
Yep.
You know, you have a pinnacle of the community with Saquon Barkley, who's a no bullshit, go to work type of runner, going to a coach that fully embraces north-south running, strong offensive line, very little mistakes, with a read option anecdote as well with Jalen Hurts because he can run too.
Absolutely.
Don't know how much we're going to see that this week because of the injury last week when hobbling off. So I think the RPO might be a little limited, but he can still step back and throw. But that was a match made in heaven, Saquon Barkley going to the Eagles. And it's, as a football fan of old, it's good to see a good run game come from Philadelphia again. You know, like Brian Westbrook type running.
Oh, yeah.
Like, I love Brian Westbrook.
Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah.
You know, that's what Saquon in the Eagles uniform reminds me of. Like the Andy Reid era Eagles.
Mm-hmm. Oh, man, the Andy Reid Eagles, man, with Donovan McNabb,
Terrell Owens,
T.O., Westbrook.
Brian Westbrook, beginning of
Jeremy
Fletcher
Macklin.
Cox's career.
Yep. Brian Dawkins, Trent
Cole. You have, I believe Asante Samuel was on that team.
It's crazy, too, to think that the Eagles for their franchise for our generation, right? They've had a lot of great players on their team for so long and have been, a roller coaster of a team. They've had their ups and their downs, right? Whereas the Commanders, it's like they have really the last couple years. It's like it's hard to think of as many great players in Washington as the Eagles, right? It's like you could like Scary Terry, right? And it's like, gotta rewind it back a little bit, right? Because
It's been a couple years.
Washington has not, again, made the right decisions in the offseason that has benefited their team. So it's like they kind of, for the longest time with Dan Snyder, really tried to make big splashes in free agency of really old players that didn't really make sense. Like Deion Sanders at the end of his career, Albert Hainsworth, which was a horrendous deal.
Donovan McNabb.
Donovan McNabb. I was just about to say him. Yep.
And aged Adrian Peterson.
Which, I mean,
which was still a great run.
Yeah,
that was a great run with him, but
it's been very isolating and cold as a Washington fan. The last 20 years have not been kind, and so for them to be right here against the Eagles, out of all teams, it seems very fitting because the Eagles have just probably for the last, again, in our lifetime, has probably been the best team for the longest in that division,
and it's not close.
Yeah, like the Giants obviously won more Super Bowls in that time, but it's like the Eagles are they've been more relevant for the last recent years too.
They've been consistently better for longer.
Yeah, and the Giants, it's like they have been in darkness and this NFC title game is that darkness for that New York Giants.
This is the Giants franchise worst nightmare. Literally, I'm watching these two teams that like you said, I could have picked the pieces from both of these teams had I just played my cards right. The cards were in my hand, and I let it go. And now both of these teams have helped elevate. Both of these players have elevated these franchises to a place where I probably won't get in the next 5 years. They set themselves back at least 5 years not signing Saquon Barkley.
They also fucked themselves this year by winning that game against the Colts.
Right, because now it drops them out of pretty sure it drops them very low, if not out of the lottery conversation.
I think they're 6th this year.
Right. I thought they were 8th at the last time I checked, but they're low.
Yeah. So
odds about getting a quarterback, slim.
Yeah.
They're officially slim. I'm not going to say slim to none, but they're slim. And you have a lot more problems.
I want to say my heart goes out to New York Giants fans, but John Mara, I want to thank John Mara for giving us this NFC title game because it's going to be a great one.
Right. Don't lose sleep.
And so, Chris Palmer, I ask you right here, right now, my friend, as you sip your water, who you got for this game?
This is hard. Both of these, they are just insanely hard because these two teams match up so well.
Mm-hmm.
You're going to have to give me Washington.
Ooh.
You're going to have to give me Washington. I think the injury to Jalen Hurts at the end of that game is going to hinder them a lot more than people expect, and I think that's where Dan Quinn's going to capitalize. He's going to get in the face of Jalen Hurts all night, and he's not going to allow him to really throw. He's not going to allow him to move, and then that's also going to cause problems for Saquon because it's going to become one-directional.
Mm-hmm. Ooh. And so you're predicting Jade Daniels takes Washington?
I think the kid's going to do it.
Ooh, I respect it, man. And part of me does want that. It really does. It's like, man, because whoever they go against, right? It's going to be the Bills and the Chiefs. It's like, God damn, seems to be a great matchup where it's like, holy crap. This is tough.
It's
And,
hard.
and like you said, both teams match up so well with each other. They play each other so well. Both games that they played this year came down to one possession.
The
And it
last
was
6 games have come down to the last possession for Washington.
for Washington, yes. And in that time, like the Eagles they were one of those games that they won. They lost 3 games in a row in the month of November. But again, they've been playing playoff football since then.
Right.
The Eagles, they just went on a tear this year. And then obviously kind of faltered a little bit at the end with injuries and stuff like that. You know, Jalen Hurts, with the concussion in the Washington game was very detrimental. And obviously Jalen Hurts getting hurt last week, that's not
Doesn't help.
That's not good signs anyway. But I'm taking the Eagles. And because
I don't knock you for doing it.
Because Jalen Hurts or Jalen Perks. I think either one, if either one is on the field, they'll be fine. And again, their offense is very versatile because we talk a lot. Again, we talked so much about Jalen Hurts and Saquon, but we totally forgot to mention Devonta Smith, AJ Brown. Dallas Goedert.
AJ Brown's been kind of absent this playoffs.
He's been pouty. He's been very pouty this year because it's like he's not having the offensive production that he wants. That's why he was reading a book like 2 weeks ago.
But that book was a book of...
It was like a self-help book.
Yeah, it was a self-help book. It was
on the bench.
They were up by 20.
I know. It's just like...
I'm checked out. I'm not needed.
Yeah, pretty much. And I think that this game they will be needed. Especially those two, because that's such a great duo. And you and I, we talk about how great AJ Brown and Devonta Smith are. Mm-hmm. And this year, it's like AJ Brown had only like 1,000 yards receiving, because again, they've been
took the load
because they've been a running team. And I think that's when you're a running team, you control the game more often than not than the opposing team. The Commanders are kind of a balanced team. They're not one really too dominant running or passing. They're kind of in that like sweet middle spot. But the Eagles, man, I wouldn't be mad if the Commanders went. But I like Nick Sirianni, I like Jalen Hurts, and I'd like to see Saquon in it. So I'll take the Eagles.
Hey, I don't knock it. I would like to see Saquon finish the fuck you of the year. If he walks into New Orleans, that is the biggest middle finger.
He's gonna put
ever.
The ring on his middle finger. He's just gonna be like,
literally, he's gonna wear his middle finger, the ring on his middle finger.
Check it out.
Hey guys, I just got it sized.
There's nothing but on the middle finger, just because fuck.
That's it, forever. Inside he's gonna get it engraved. Fuck the Giants.
Bro. He'd be my favorite player if he did that.
Yo.
Oh, man. So, that is the NFC title game. But Chris Palmer, that's only one half of the Super Bowl, mate. We have a whole other game, a dramatic game, between the Bills and the Chiefs. I think a lot of people share that sentiment, right?
Such a bitter game.
It's a dramatic game, mate. It's going to be... I think a lot of people are really tired with the Chiefs. And may I start this one?
Yeah, go ahead.
Okay, so we're going to go back many, many moons ago to a faraway land. Where in football, I always said that, or not always said, but like in the playoffs, we said that the story of the NFL is told through the playoffs, right? And it wasn't that long ago where we were under another dynasty, the Patriots dynasty. Tom Brady, just kept winning Super Bowls, being in Super Bowls, and just kept winning them, right? He won it against, obviously, very early on in his career, but obviously in the 2010s, they won 3 Super Bowls in that era. They were pretty much in 8 straight AFC title games. You and I, we've said pretty much the whole time where it's like, if you're going to have to go through the Super Bowl, you're going to have to play the Patriots. And lo and behold, in that time, there was a white knight that came. He was drafted by Kansas City to lead the Midwest to promised victory. His first year, he fucking balled out, and it was incredible. 50 touchdowns in his first year starting, unheard of. Obviously, not his rookie year, but still impressive. And he met Brady at the AFC title game, and Brady beat him. And it was like, oh well, you'll be back there next year. And then soon later, Brady left. He left for Tampa, wanted to leave under the Patriots and just be like, no, I could still do it on my own. Bill doesn't want me there anymore, but I got more ball in me.
Mm-hmm.
And there was that power vacuum where you and I spoke, where it's like a team's like it's anybody's game at this point in time, because for a lot of our time watching football, there was a stretch of time from between the Patriots dynasty, we saw a team win a Super Bowl like back to back, like not back to back years, but like a different team winning the Super Bowl every year. It was Colts, it was the Steelers, again, it was the Giants again, Ravens, Saints, Packers,
Patriots,
Seahawks,
Patriots.
So in the order after it was like Super Bowl 49, then 50, it was Peyton Manning's year, right? We went out on that blaze of glory.
Mm-hmm.
But then after that year, Brady made the Super Bowl, boom, 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 three years back to back to back, and won 2 out of 3 of them, to his credit. So, but there was that power vacuum. The White Knight stepped up and accepted the challenge that was, and really laid waste to a lot of great teams in that year. It took a Herculean effort against the Texans. A massive 24-point comeback to just ascend his greatness and how great he is as a player, right? Under, again, the perfect circumstance, led by Andy Reid. You have Travis Kelce. You have a great vets on the team. Gets there, wins his Super Bowl. It's like, okay, this is very interesting. Goes back to the title game. And goes to another Super Bowl to play Tom Brady. Tom Brady says, I'm the king.
I'm still here.
You're just a prince. I'm the king. And so Brady, after that, shortly, won his ring against Mahomes. And then a year or two later, then retired. And now, he's a commentator for Fox. But now, Chiefs wanted to go back again. Joe Burrow said, wait. We have the better team. We're here to shock the Chiefs. Went to the Super Bowl, lost to the Rams with another great story between Matt Stafford and Sean McVay. Won their ring, and after that, Chiefs to the Super Bowl. And it's the Prince wanted more. Just more and more rings, more fame, more immortality in football. And here we stand, where the Prince is now the king of the NFL. But man, he's been corrupted by power, and it has not been kind to the rest of the league, because we view the Chiefs as this villain, right? We once great promised offense, right? Now a team that's like can't even stomach to watch at this point. It's like all the calls, all the just officiating coming down to the wire. It's been very tough to just keep watching the Chiefs, where they've just been so good for so long, and they've proven it. But man, it's been a long time since we're going to see a team that's going to be like a stretch of time where teams are just going to win a Super Bowl, like a different team every year, because this Chiefs team is here to stay, and they have just become the new evil empire that was passed down from Brady and the Patriots to Andy Reid and the Chiefs. Now, granted, Andy Reid, he's a more likable guy than Bill Belichick, right?
Without a doubt.
He's a more likable guy, right? But Mahomes he has not become a likable quarterback as the years have gone on. And I think a lot of people kind of sour, and even myself too, where it's like kind of sour, where it's like, oh man, it's like when he wins, like it's at the expense of a lot of teams, right? But when he loses, he just bitches, man. And he just really like Brady sulked. That was one thing, right? But Mahomes, like, he's just like, it was a horrible call. That was a horrible call. Like, Herman, please shut the fuck up. But
yeah. So to piggyback off of that, right? Yes, I agree with you. He started out. He is a cheat code.
Mhm.
He will be the next greatest of all time. These were all the things that were said his first year as a starter. We said it. He's a cheat code. He does things that can't be done, can't be mimicked, can't be played out.
Yep.
And then the rule changes started. Not that they started, but they started ramping up the speed of the rule changes. Subtle, but key changes.
Well, I want to just quick piggyback off that for a sec. They changed the overtime rule because of the Mahomes and Allen
Key
game
changes.
in the divisional round. Yeah.
Subtle, but key.
Mm-hmm.
We're going to change the overtime rule in a postseason game as a rule. Not the regular season. It's the postseason only. So people start seeing that, and it's like, oh, that was more lopsided. That's a lopsided rule change. We'll move on from that one. And then it was they shortened the window for roughing the passer to where you have to be there within a second or 2 seconds after the ball is released from the quarterback's hands, or it's a roughing the passer. Another offensive lopsided rule change. Subtle, but key. Now, a sliding quarterback. Defense had to prepare how to hit a quarterback correctly, safely, while they're going for the slides. If the helmet collides, it is an off-the-bat unnecessary roughness. It's another offensive lopsided, subtle rule change. If the quarterback is running outside of the box, they are considered a runner. But if they are out of bounds and you touch them, it is unnecessary roughness. Another lopsided rule change. Where if they are heading out of bounds, or this is how it seems now when you watch a Chiefs game. When they're heading out of bounds, you can no longer touch them. Not if they're out of bounds. If they're heading out of bounds. Because if Patrick Mahomes heads out of bounds and you lay a finger on him, you're getting 15 yards. The reason why I personally can't stand the way Patrick Mahomes has played this year specifically, with the officiating being as bad as it is, he's taken full advantage to entice defensive penalties. You are now enticing 15-yard penalties for people who were just doing their jobs. So, and then, like you were saying, last year during the Chiefs game when Valdez-Scantling was off sides by a mile at the end of the game, he threw a temper tantrum. And he jumped on the bandwagon on the poor officiating. So you're now part of the conversation we've been having for years, but for the wrong reason. A call didn't go your way, so you jumped on the bandwagon. But when the calls are going your way, you're silent. That's one reason why people can't stand you.
Yeah. And just to piggyback off that too, the overtime rule. How did last year's Super Bowl end?
Oh, that was because of the overtime rule. Right.
And who won that Super Bowl? It was the Chiefs, right?
Right. It's again, a key but subtle.
And this past weekend, like you said, they can't touch them when they're heading out of bounds. this past weekend, there's footage of
of him
Lamar, Allen,
flopping
of him flopping, but of Lamar, Allen, Goff,
and
and
Jared Goff
Jalen Hurts and Matt Stafford all getting out of bounds and
and
being
being
hip
floored.
dropped and being
Floored.
hip drop tackle, which is illegal now, not
Correct.
being called.
But to be fair, that really hasn't been called across the board this year. That was a new installed, but again,
But it's like, why not call it straight across the board?
lopsided offensive rule change. Subtle, but key. That's been the mantra of this game is we're going to make this offensive play so fast with these rule changes that there's nothing defense can do. Because we're slowing defense down step by step.
And we're not, again, for a defensive back, it's like your job is to stop offensive progression through force, right? Not through flag football or anything, by force.
Like full speed.
And so for defensive linemen, linebackers, and defensive backs, over the past couple years, like they have really tried to kind of abide to the new rule changes. And there's a lot of instances this year where it's like, man, that really shouldn't be a penalty, right? Like you can kind of see like what a penalty is, and where it's like that's very blatant. That's very like, oh, he was 100% holding him. This dude was like literally like choking him out. Like yeah, that's a penalty. Like this dude's pushing this dude to the ground. That should be a pass interference, right? Like there's some things where it's like very ticky tack stuff, right? But what has really made, especially this past Saturday, of like very hard to watch Chiefs games is that these penalties decide games, and you can go back for years, like that you and I have been doing this. It's like the poor officiating, it has not gotten better.
It's gotten worse substantially.
We've talked about it for years, and it's not gotten better because at the end it's like we're watching two different games. We're watching the game of football, and then we're watching the game of football that the refs are calling. And sometimes they meet. Sometimes it's like, yes, that is the right call. But there we could turn to a lot of instances and a lot of games where it's like that was not the right call. And that really changed the outcome of a lot of games. And it's just, for us, the viewer, we see the Chiefs are on prime time a lot because they've earned the right to do so. They are like the best team. But we see that on primetime stage, like on a solo stage, and it's like, how are you going to excuse this? How is this like acceptable? Where it's like a game is decided by yellow flags. We know that that yellow is like the Chiefs' second color, but like, please, still, like at that point. But it's for this matchup. We talked a lot of Chiefs. Flip to the Bills real quick. The Bills have the best chance out of anyone in the AFC to beat the Chiefs. Josh Allen has been here before to the title game, and much like what D'Amico Ryan said last week, it's us against everybody, right? And the Bills know that, and the Bills know that too because they've shared this stage before, and almost every time they've answered the call. But it's again those few plays at the end that decide the games. And I think that if there's anyone to stop Patrick Mahomes in the three-peat, it has to be Josh Allen, right? It seems only poetic that I guess the biggest quarterback rivalry since Brady Manning has been Allen Mahomes because they've just been meeting so often in the playoffs. And Mahomes and big games in the regular season too. And obviously the Chiefs have beaten the Bills every single time, man. And it's so tough because it's like Brady and Manning, the first couple times, Brady had Manning's number for a long stretch of time until he didn't. Until he was just able to break out of that shell and break those chains and just it seems again like a fairy tale fantasy, man, where it's like now we have a new white knight coming in to slay this corrupted king, man. It's a really poetic thing, but man, the Bills have to know that they have to play flawless football because otherwise a lot of calls are not going to go their way. But if you don't give them an opportunity to make those calls, you just let the game decide for itself.
Yeah, no. When it comes to playing the Chiefs, you cannot, and I cannot stress this enough, you cannot leave it in the referee's hands. Because, for lack of a better term, this season, the Chiefs have been force-fed to the AFC Championship.
Mm-hmm.
That's why I was saying when we were talking about Washington, what is the draw of the NFC? Because there's a draw with the AFC right now. It's the Chiefs running for a three-peat. So that draw has been force-fed upon us all year. There can be games on the other side of the fucking state, on the other side of the country being played, and you're hearing Patrick Mahomes' name being called by analysts. It happened all year. They have been force-feeding Patrick Mahomes, and then you go and you flip on a Chiefs game, and it's just referee controversy everywhere. They're doing things they want. There's up-team holding calls on a single drive that don't get called. They have one penalty all game, while the other team has 7 or 8 penalties. It's just, I don't like going down the conspiracy road that the league is rigged. I don't like to go down that road because it's a fucking very tricky path to walk away from once you start. But when you start seeing things like the subtle but key rule changes that coincidentally help Patrick Mahomes win another Super Bowl, they coincidentally help them win key games and key moments. Coincidentally, they don't get flags thrown on them for doing the wrong thing at the wrong time. Coincidentally, calls get reversed that have never been reversed before, that would have lost them a regular season game, that would have dropped them out of clinching the first seed. Like, things that simply would not go the way that they wanted if they weren't the Kansas City Chiefs. Any other team that call, when I'm talking about the call that they made when they were playing the Raiders, fumble got reversed, could have won the game. The Raiders could have won the game.
No, it was
on a reverse call.
It was a fumble, but it should have been called false start. Not.
It should have been a false start.
The play
should have been a dead play.
It should have been a dead play. Yeah.
Right. But instead, they called it a live play. Chiefs ball, game over.
Yeah.
How do you reverse a dead ball penalty?
And
any other team, that doesn't happen, is what I'm saying.
Absolutely. And it's like, what makes the Chiefs, it's like so, I guess, villainous, right, is that for so long, and especially this season, they've had little adversity. And it's like they just, and for literally every other team in the league, they are defined by their adversity that they have to overcome.
Right. Like, and you have the most catered to team in the league complaining the most.
The most vocal, have the most time, have the most, like, sponsorship. It's
the most shit to say.
It's the most, like, fatigue. Like, Chiefs fatigue is real for if you're not a Chiefs fan. And that's the thing. It's like, at this point in time, it's like, please, Josh Allen. It's like, I feel for Josh Allen because, like, his career is going to be defined. Every time you talk about Josh Allen, you have to talk about Patrick Mahomes because he has been in his way.
Right.
Every single time. And it's like, it's so unfair to the Bills because this is, again, the best iteration of the Bills that we've seen under Sean McDermott and Josh Allen. And it's like, we saw the Bills beat the Chiefs this year. They are a better team, but not obviously in, like, win total. It's like, but they, like, as a team, it's like, man, they play ball. They play football the way it's meant to be played, right?
Right.
And it's like, where the Chiefs, they play it how they want it to play. And that's one thing that is so discouraging to watch. And for me, one thing about the three-peat in dynasties, like, for me, why I don't want it to happen, is because dynasties take away, they kind of they change history, and they kind of erase history at the same time. Where we forget a lot of great teams that played in the league that maybe never won a championship or only won one championship, but was overshadowed by a team of a certain decade. And for every decade, there is a dynasty. Like last decade was the Patriots. The year before was the Patriots again. But, we had a stretch of time in between where it was like a lot of different teams. 90s was the Cowboys. 80s was the 49ers. 70s was the Steelers. 60s was the Packers, et cetera, et cetera. And the Chiefs, to get a three-peat, you kind of you kind of cement that you're like the best dynasty of
that's
all
a
time.
fucking conversation.
Because no other team, no other dynasty has done that. Right? And so again, it changes history. It changes how we look at the past.
It changes the perception of everything.
It changes the perception of everything we come to think of in the league, right? And under this Chiefs dynasty, in years from now, we're not going to remember Josh Allen as fondly, right? If he doesn't win it,
at least one.
We're not going to remember Lamar as fondly as
or Joe Burrow
or
Baker Mayfield on Tampa,
Jalen Hurts,
Jared Goff, Dan Campbell's Detroit teams.
All these great teams that we're seeing now are not going to be remembered as fresh over time, and because it will just be overshadowed by, oh, that was the three-peat year. That was the three-peat year. And it's like, man, there's so much other, take for last decade, right? We forget about how great Matt Ryan was with his MVP caliber year with Julio Jones. We kind of overlooked Megatron breaking a record of most receiving yards in the season, right? It's like
I don't think those are really overlooked. Respectfully, everyone wanted that fucking Atlanta team to be great.
Oh yeah,
you know what I'm saying? They started out 11-1, and then they fucking lost, and then they played terrible.
The Seahawks dynasty that never was.
Seahawks dynasty that never was. The Legion of Boom, once it broke, and everyone saw the problems with Pete Carroll.
The Todd Gurley Rams.
Right, the Todd Gurley Rams. Everyone saw the hamstring injury happen, and everyone saw that. Those teams will be remembered. When it comes to this Chiefs team, I don't think they're going to let that narrative change the perception of history. They're going to look back at those teams, and they're going to see this team, and then people are going to bring in the context as to how they got there. With all of those dynasty teams from the decades, it's the tone in which they set for their legacies, right? In Green Bay, but they made the Lombardi Trophy literally.
They named it after Vince Lombardi. Yep.
Right. 70s, the Steel Curtain. The 80s, San Francisco, but it was also the Bears. Got to remember the 83 Chicago Bears.
85
Bears.
And they only won one, too. They
only won one?
They only won one because, you know why? Because the 49ers was the team of the decade.
49ers were that much better. Right, it was their decade. 90s, Cowboys. They were the fucking hogs up front. You know what I'm saying? And then the Patriots. But this one, the tone in which they're setting is, we are going to be catered to at any cost. So the people who are watching this three-peat unfold, if there's controversy, which we half expect at this point, it is very much going to dilute that.
It's not going to feel, and I agree with you, it's not
going
to feel... It is not going
to have the potency that the other legacies have.
It's going to feel like a tainted championship, right? Exactly. But it's still a championship nonetheless, too. And I think that when people do talk about it, say he does, the Chiefs do win it, right? It, again, changes the perception of how we view Mahomes, how we view the Chiefs as a franchise, how we view Andy Reid as a coach, how we view a lot of the players individually on these teams as well. And I would... in recent years, or I guess in fresh years, next year or something like that, we'll put the context there. But in 20 years' time, that context is going to lose itself, right? People are just going to be like, oh, that was, they won a three-peat or so. It's not going to be as contextually relevant as time goes on, at least in my opinion.
Over time, the context.
Yeah.
See, but at the same time, I don't know, because the context as to how the Steelers had their Steel Curtain dynasty, that still holds prevalent to this day. You know, like that's an all-time type of legacy conversation.
But
You
but
know,
let me ask you this: do we contextualize the Patriots' early dynasty with the tuck rule and how they should have not won that game against Oakland, but yet still managed to get there?
no, because of the tone in which they got there every
Mhm.
season afterwards.
Mhm.
You know, that was one
Mhm.
controversial situation. Oh, fuck me.
Hit the light.
Pause for just 1 second.
I'll just cut this out. Don't worry. This man hit the lights. All of the lights.
Let there be
Yeah.
light.
Let there be light.
All right. The tone in which Tom Brady and the Patriots got there.
Mhm.
That was one controversial call that ended in a rule change, right? When you have 15 games worth of controversial calls in one season, that's a totally different conversation. I don't think that conversation about this three-peat stops. It's anytime someone's going to hear about the Chiefs three-peat, there's always going to be one person that goes, yeah, but this is how they got there.
Yeah.
That third year.
Uh,
That conversation's not going to end.
I hope that the context always remains there, right? Because it is important to get there. I want to again, for example, getting back to that Patriots dynasty in the early 2000s. That was also a decade where they were under scrutiny for Spygate,
Deflategate.
like
For
Deflategate, and
Spygate.
for Spygate as well, where it's like they were accused of cheating, and by a lot of owners too in Super Bowls, they were accused of like recording the walkthroughs and stuff like that. So, but we don't talk about that as much, right? And that's only 20 years removed. And so,
No, I get you. I understand what
yeah,
you're saying.
yeah,
I get you.
I think with the Chiefs, right? We as fans know, to your point, it would feel very tainted if they got this.
It would be a totally diluted.
It would be a complete insult to the league where it's like you put them here because you wanted them here, not because
They earned it.
they were the best team in football.
Correct.
Because there have been this season, there has been so many great teams that have earned the right to be in the championship, and because of just how this season has played out, a lot of those teams will not get that chance. So it sucks because like as like non-Chiefs fans, it's like they didn't have to be the villain, right? If this was like the Chiefs from like back in like 2019 where they were still slinging it and they were still like having a fun time and everything like that, and they weren't looking for penalties in game, yeah, you know what? I think a lot of people would be more on their side, or at least a lot less like vitriol towards them.
Right. It wouldn't be as visceral. It wouldn't be as nauseating or bitter of a game going in this week. It would be like, okay, they're still exciting to watch. They're no longer exciting to watch. Number one, they struggle to score up. They put up 30. Number two, they hunt for fucking defensive enticing penalties.
Mm-hmm.
And then when penalties don't go their way, they bitch and complain.
Mm-hmm.
Like I said it a couple weeks ago, they are, in my opinion, they're the worst 15-win team I've ever seen. Because it's just those 15 wins have been fucking handed to you on a silver platter because you've taken full advantage of poor officiating.
Well, I mean, not all of them, right? Because the Ravens Chiefs game,
A toe.
was by a toe, right? But it's like again, that's how close their games have been this year.
The controversy is though, but
that's the margin of like victory that has been for the Chiefs this entire year. They've been teetering on that, and it's like realistically, they shouldn't be falling one way all the time.
It's got to fall the other way at some point.
Yes, and we spoke about this like for a while this season, where it's like there comes a time
when that other shoe drops,
where their luck runs out. Yep, and that other shoe drops. And Chris Palmer, I want to know: does that shoe drop?
You see, that's the thing is, like I was saying before with Washington, right? You got to think the business aspect of the NFL. So what you can think about the chances of a Super Bowl in 3 different categories: who
Mhm.
you want, who you realistically think, and what draws the biggest headline.
Mhm.
Luckily for me, who I want and what draws the biggest headline, they run in the same vein. What, in your opinion, what is the biggest headline out of these 4 teams?
The Chiefs and the
Who versus
three-peat.
who?
The Chiefs and the three-peat,
On
and
the AFC side,
mhm. And then probably a rookie quarterback getting it done. That's probably
the kid versus
yeah.
the three-peat.
They like an ultimate David Goliath matchup, right? That's a biblical story that's ingrained in our culture that we like just
We
love.
strive to look for.
And as fans, it's like that we love to see that kind of matchup where it's like an underdog versus a very, very formidable foe. And that's the thing, is like there have been the best games in the NFL have been upset games.
Have been David versus Goliath games, and
But
it's
you can look back as fresh as last week, the Commanders versus the Lions, and
right.
what an upset that was, right?
Right. So
And
now
so I'm curious. So you're going Chiefs? The shoe doesn't drop.
I don't think the shoe drops here because you want to talk about like teams that prepare well for each other, right?
Mm-hmm.
There isn't a team that Andy Reid doesn't prepare well for. He may actually prepare for the Bills better than just about any other team in the league.
Mm-hmm.
So for that, I think Kansas City goes again. I think they touch ground in New Orleans.
Oh man,
My pick is Commanders Chiefs Super
Mhm.
Bowl.
I respect it. I respect it, mate. I think that if the Chiefs do make it, right, I think they win that NFC matchup regardless. I think that because they match up better than the Commanders and the Eagles do, plainly. And I would love, getting back to the Commanders, I would love Jaden Daniels to get in there. But there's a big reason rookies have a tough time getting to this far in the playoffs, because they don't have that in-game experience of getting that defense on them, right? And the virtual reality is really nice, right? But you can't simulate a hit unless you're actually playing the game.
No, I understand that for sure.
and I think that for the Eagles, again, they match up very well. I think we're going to see a lot of blitzing on Jaden Daniels, and they're going to force him to throw the ball more than he's comfortable with. And it's really tough for rookies, and I would love to see that matchup. But getting back to the AFC side, this is the game. Like, this is, to me, the Super Bowl. Because I think that either one of these AFC teams are just that much better and a little bit more special than the NFC teams, in my opinion. I think that both these teams are absolutely just juggernauts. And I was wrong with the Eagles and Lions, but man, unfortunately, I was right with the Chiefs and Bills having a date with destiny in the playoffs. And it's only fitting that it's at the AFC title game for a chance to go to the Super Bowl. Because Josh Allen hasn't been here since the COVID year. He has not been to a title game. He's been stuck in the divisional round for a while, and it's not even a Herculean effort to beat Lamar. It took an efficient effort to beat Lamar and the Ravens. He only had 147 total yards, 2 rushing touchdowns, no turnovers. And if you're going to play the Chiefs, that's kind of what you got to do.
You got to do your best.
You got to be efficient. You can't kill yourself. You can't give them any turnovers to give them any ammo to give them any extra possessions. And Josh Allen knows this. And Sean McDermott knows this. And this is a year where this was supposed to be a reset year for the Bills. And they actually, in season, bolstered their offense.
They reset and go.
And the defensive players got more reps, and they got better as the season has gotten on. I got to give them the defense a lot of credit. I was very skeptical how they would be looking against the Ravens in the divisional round. The defense was fine. The defense did exactly what they needed to and make the stops when necessary. And, they didn't. I mean, Lamar's going to get his. Derrick Henry's going to get his, right? But you slowed us down and took advantage of opportunities, made the picks, recovered the fumbles, took advantage of some really good opportunities. Chiefs aren't going to give you as many opportunities as the Ravens are. Ravens, we beat ourselves a lot. I see it every year in the play. We beat ourselves a lot. The Chiefs don't beat themselves.
The refs don't let them beat themselves.
The refs don't let them beat themselves. But I will give credit to the Chiefs as well. They do not beat themselves. They are, again, a very well-coached team under Andy Reid. They are a very disciplined team. And they have been the better team for the last 7 years under Andy Reid and Mahomes, because it is 2 weeks before the Super Bowl, and we're right at the Chiefs are right there at the precipice of doing it. But I think it's Josh Allen's time.
Oof. You think it happens?
I think it happens. I'm going with the Bills. The Bills this year have, again, strengthened their strength this year and strengthened their weakness. Their receiving core that we're very skeptical on this year is now actually pretty fucking good. Remember Curtis Samuel? He's on the Bills.
Right.
Amari Cooper is on the Bills. By the way, Keon Coleman turned out to be a pretty solid rookie wide receiver.
And Dalton Kincaid is solid.
Dalton Kincaid has stepped up. James Cook, he's a stud. And their defense is young, but I think they are up for the challenge. Because on the Chiefs' offense, aside from Travis Kelce, and they do have D-Hop, but it's not D-Hop as we remember him, right? The Chiefs are not going to be explosive on offense. But man, if the Bills get to 30, I think they can win.
Oh, and it's a race to 30. I think
the Bills can get to 30 faster than the Chiefs can. But I think this game comes down to the wire. It's going to come down to whoever has the ball last. It's going to be a one-possession game. It's not going to be a blowout. It's going to be hard-fought. It's going to be dramatic. And I'm all for it, man. So we are completely split.
Total split.
On the fucking Super Bowl.
I love it. Well,
Watch, we're going to go 1-1.
Right. Watch, it's going to wind up being the fucking Eagles and the Chiefs. The Super Bowl fucking no one wants.
Pretty much. I will say, I think the Super Bowl everyone does want is the Bills Commanders.
I would love a Bills Commanders Super Bowl.
That would be great. That would be absolutely great. And I think
that would be the most refreshing Super Bowl.
And the one no one wants is Chiefs Eagles.
Right, and that's the most realistic one.
Probably.
You know what I'm saying?
Well, hey, we'll see Championship Sunday.
We'll see. All right, guys. We're split. The board is set. Final four. Who do y'all got? Please leave a like. Comment who you think is going to the Super Bowl. Subscribe. We will be here 2 weeks from now to talk the Super Bowl. This weekend is the most important weekend of the year. Until then, we'll see you guys in 2 weeks.